We are facing a catastrophe. The United States will not be held hostage. If we have to, we will take the oil fields by force. 1973, the United States, the greatest industrial power the world had ever seen, was grinding to a halt. Factories closed. The New York Stock Exchange lost $97 billion in 6 weeks. In Oregon, people left their cars overnight just to hold a spot in line.
A little less than a half a tank, and I got to go out to Glendale, Brooklyn, New York, and this is business. This is not pleasure.
Inside the White House, they discussed the unthinkable, invading their own allies in the Middle East just to keep the lights on. The question is, how? How did a black sludge found in the ground go from being a cheap commodity, cheaper than water, to a political weapon capable of bringing superpowers to their knees? What was the single decision that changed the geopolitical map forever? To understand how oil became a weapon, you have to understand the world before anyone tried to use it that way. In the 50s and 60s, oil wasn't dramatic. It was a commodity, predictable, cheap, and treated as routine business. Specifically, it was a business run by the Seven Sisters, 7 massive Western oil companies like Exxon, Shell, and BP that controlled around 85% of the world's oil reserves. They decided how much oil was pumped, and they decided the price.
The new SO gives you premium performance, unexcelled at regular price. And the new SO Extra is unexcelled at any price. Extra quick starts, extra power, extra anti-knock. You can take your choice.
For decades, the oil-producing nations in the Middle East were getting pennies on the dollar. They were resource-rich, but cash-poor. The West treated the Middle East like a gas station. You fill up, you throw a few coins on the counter, and you leave. But in 1960, quietly, in a small meeting room in Baghdad, a group of men met to change the script. They formed an organization called OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. At first, the West laughed at them. OPEC looked like a clumsy trade union. What were they going to do? Stop selling oil? They needed the money as much as the West needed the fuel. It looked like a stalemate, or so the West thought. For 13 years, OPEC was a sleeping giant. On the 6th of October, 1973, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel, giving birth to what became known as the Yom Kippur War. At first, the Arab nations were winning, but then President Nixon made a move. He authorized Operation Nickel Grass, a massive airlift of weapons and supplies to save Israel. It worked. The tide of the war turned. But in Saudi Arabia, King Faisal was watching. He had warned the US, do not intervene. When American planes landed in Israel, Faisal felt betrayed. He called a meeting of the Arab oil ministers in Kuwait. And this is the moment. This is the single decision. On the 17th of October, 1973, the Arab members of OPEC announced that they would not just raise prices. They were cutting production by 5% every single month until Israel withdrew. And then they went for the kill shot, a total oil embargo on the United States. For the first time, a commodity was being used as a weapon against a superpower. The price of oil didn't just rise, it quadrupled.
An OPEC oil embargo led to an international shortage and rocked the global economy.
In the US, the effect was instant and catastrophic. We're not talking about paying a few cents more at the pump. We're talking about the spine of the American economy snapping. Truckers went on strike, blocking highways. Schools closed to save heat. The US government even asked people to turn off Christmas lights. The psychological shock was worse than the economic one. For the first time since World War II, Americans felt helpless. Their destiny wasn't being decided in Washington, D.C., it was being decided in Riyadh. Oil, the Saudi minister Ahmed Zaki Yamani famously said, is a weapon. After that, the White House went into panic mode. This is where those invasion plans were drawn up. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger was flying from capital to capital, engaging in shuttle diplomacy, trying to negotiate an end to the embargo before the economy snapped. Inside Washington, the people who were supposed to be untouchable suddenly looked nervous. The United States wasn't used to feeling weak, and now the whole world could see it.
The White House today announced new measures to combat the escalating oil crisis, urging voluntary rationing.
The embargo eventually ended in March 1974. But the damage was done. The weapon had been fired. That quiet decision gave the world the petrodollar system and reshaped the entire Middle East. The 70s didn't close the chapter. They opened a playbook. Fast forward to 2022. When Russia invaded Ukraine, what was the biggest fear? It was not Russian nuclear weapons, it was Russian gas. Europe had spent decades depending on cheap Russian energy, forgetting the lesson of 1973. Vladimir Putin tried to do exactly what King Faisal did. He turned the valve. He weaponized winter, hoping that freezing Europeans would force their governments to stop supporting Ukraine. It was the same playbook, only the target had changed. What they agreed to in that room in Kuwait back then proved something simple. You do not need the strongest army if you own the pump. The age of cheap, harmless oil was over. But weapons eventually lose their edge. The shock of oil being turned into leverage terrified the West so much that they spent the next 50 years trying to make sure it could never happen again. They built the Strategic Petroleum Reserves, massive underground salt caverns holding millions of barrels of oil for emergencies. They unlocked fracking in Texas, turning the United States into the world's largest oil producer again. And maybe most importantly, the weaponization of oil sped up the push toward green energy. Not necessarily to save the planet, but to save national security. Every solar panel installed is one less bullet in the gun of a petrostate. Today, the weapon is rusty. OPEC struggles to control prices the way it once did. Members cheat on quotas. The United States pumps its own oil. The stranglehold is loosening. But make no mistake, the weapon is still loaded. As long as the world runs on oil, the people who sit on top of it hold the trigger. Click that red button, keep your tank full, and I'll see you in the next one.